The story begins with the words, "I never believed in the phenomenon called light at the end of tunnel," which appeared thanks to those rare cases when people who were on the verge of death woke up in a cold sweat and exclaimed, "I saw the light. But here I am in this so-called tunnel. And how did I die?" The last thing I remember is how I was alone in my room. They show us a view of a luxurious room. I looked at the city from a height, and then, when I went to bed, my body became impossibly heavy, showing us the main character in bed. We are thrown into his vague thoughts that he was poisoned or killed. He says to himself, "Think, Gray. A lot of people wanted me dead. After all, I was the king. Well, as much as I would like to find out the cause of my death, there is nothing else I can do about it. There is no other choice but to go along with it. It would be better not to have a choir of babies singing at the end." And the light kept getting closer and closer. Suddenly he heard the words, "My congratulations, sir and madam. He is a healthy boy." Through a hazy look, he could see the outlines of people's faces, especially the man standing in front of him. But the question immediately popped into his mind, "Have I just been born?" Then a female voice spoke, "Hold him a little, dear. I do not see." His thoughts continued. Does this mean that the light at the end of the tunnel is the light passing through women? No, it does not matter. Suddenly, a voice spoke, as he assumed. It was his mother's. "He is beautiful." And then he heard a male voice, already assuming that it was the voice of his father. "He has your hair." The main character was very glad that wherever he was, he could understand this language, and this is a good sign. He looks up and looks at the beautiful woman who is holding him in her arms, thinking bright, tender smile, piercing motherly love. "I can't help but think about how beautiful, charming she is." She speaks softly and lovingly to the man opposite. "He's got your eyes, darling." Here he shifts his gaze to the man, examining him, and thinking with a strong jaw and furiously sharp eyebrows, "I am sure that this man is strict and serious." Then his thoughts about the seriousness of the person in front of him are interrupted by the man himself, saying, "Hello, baby. I'm your daddy. Can you say, Daddy?" he said with glee, immediately dispelling all assumptions about his character in appearance. The woman, on the other hand, looks at him with a displeased look and snorts, "Ray, he was just born." The man smiles and scratches his head. "It doesn't matter," the protagonist thinks, looking around. He thinks that his surroundings seem normal enough to him, but looking closer, he notices a candle on the wall and different armor lying in his mother's arms in complete incomprehension. He tenses because of a misunderstanding where he is. We are shown the house from the outside. It looks nice and cozy. Our main character begins his story. "The weeks went by slowly. Although my mother, Alice, was a gentle and kind person, she firmly held the reins of power in her family. My father, Reynolds, was a reliable and charismatic man, apart from his rare childhood antics. Although I was grateful that I was born into a loving family, my life was full of hardships that I wouldn't wish even on my enemies. Poor control of one's limbs," he thinks, trying to raise his arms and legs in the air, and inability to even control the functions of the body that came along with this prison of flesh. Again, he thinks when to urinate in his diaper, but his mother always came to the rescue with love and affection. But he thought that perhaps it was the mental fortitude that he had honed over the years he was king, and the faint hope that it was all a dream was the only thing that kept him sane. Here we are shown footage of the city in which our main character is currently located. It is carried in a sling on the back, gently holding. He thinks it seemed like he was transported back in time to a much more archaic period. He gazes admiringly at the man who carries a huge sword on his back, wondering in the past, did people usually carry weapons with them? From various stalls on the street shouted, "Elixirs are great for stamina. Only 2 coppers." According to his assumptions, these vials of suspicious-looking liquids, which are passed off as medicine, are sold legally. But his thoughts were stopped by his mother saying, "My little Art must be tired," and adds, "I'll take 3 elixirs for my husband." And our main character, with the most tired look, grumbles in his head, "How about returning home?" Already lying in his little baby crib, he reasoned in his head, "Knowledge is power. I've assessed my surroundings over the past weeks, and I'm sure I now have a solid understanding of what to expect." But his reasoning was interrupted by his father, who picked him up and lifted him into the air. He was in a very good mood, which was even alarming, and said, "Ass at home, how is my baby doing?" Mom looked at him with a strange look and went inside the room. Suddenly, our main character flew up into the air, not expecting it at all. Mom suddenly ran to Ray with restless cries of, "Ray, what will you do if he falls?" Art, on the other hand, landed softly on Ray's arms, but with a very dizzy head, as expected of such a fragile body. Art thought to himself, and added in his head, "I think I was reduced to this state by a simple throw." Ray didn't let up and said, "My father used to do it when I was younger," lifting him up into the air. Again, he said, "Listen, dear, I think our little boy is having fun." But by the look of our main character, no one would have said so, but Ray began to twist him from side to side, Alice caught herself and started yelling at Ray to calm down and let the baby go. But all the fun ended at the moment when little Art hit his knee on a wooden surface, and then it was Mom's turn to take Art in her arms and calm him down when he started to cry. Alice gently took him in her arms and began to rock the sobbing Art from side to side, saying, "Fine, my baby." And in the background was Ray with a huge bump on his head. And suddenly Alice said, "Let Mommy clean you up." And suddenly, out of nowhere, a green light poured out of her hand, which healed the baby's knee, but surprised him very much. And Alice, as if nothing had happened, lifted him into the air and said, "Here, the best of all." "I think I spoke too soon," thought Art, then added in his head, "Maybe I don't know anything about this world after all." The second chapter begins with the words, "In my past life, I was a king." We are shown our main character standing on top of the fortress. He led armies. He, riding on his horse, ousted representatives from the countries of the whole world. We can see, Gray towering over us as the man he defeated in battle. However, out of all his accomplishments, he has never been as proud as he is now. He can crawl, with a purposeful face. He crawls. He crawled very quickly and confidently. But his worried mom didn't let him enjoy the moment of glory and said, "Ray, make sure he doesn't hit his head on the corner." Her father answered her, "Well, don't let him near the shelf." And then Art's friend hit his head on some strange surface. Opening his eyes, he saw the reflection of the baby in the mirror. And then it dawned on him that it was himself. His parents shouted in one voice with tenderness, "Oh, look, Art is looking at himself in the mirror." But the thoughts of the protagonist did not let up. Although several months have passed, he is still not used to his new life. As a former king, Art seemed too sweet to him. While looking at yourself here in the mirror, he must admit that he is absolutely charming. Looking at himself in the mirror, he thought, "Beware, future ladies, get ready to break your heart." And his parents looked at it and admired the beautiful child. After his mom tucked him into bed and kissed him on the cheek, leaving with sweet dreams my little Art, and closing the door, he made sure that he was alone in the room and that everyone thought that he was sleeping. And when he abruptly got up with the words in his head, "The mission has begun," throwing the blanket on the floor, he decided to jump off his bed. With a little crash, he landed on his blanket and thought, "Now that Alice thinks I'm asleep, I have about an hour before she comes back to check on me." He crawled out of his bedroom and crawled through the corridor. As he crawled, he noticed Alice humming some song under her breath, but he did not stop because the appointment was already within reach. With diligence, he crawled forward, and when he reached his destination, he looked into the room, and he was very proud of his success. Taking out a shelf with a book, he began his short story. "Since I discovered this place, I've been sneaking here every night to learn more about the world I'm in." He learned that Takati, the continent in which he was born, consists of 3 main kingdoms. Elinor is an elven kingdom deep in the forest. Darv is a vast underground kingdom in the home of the dwarves. Lastly, Sapin is the human realm and the most populous region. But both this and the past world share the monarchical system. He reaches for another book and continues. But the rule here is transferred, not earned. Since the shelves were too high for his small stature, he fell down, but he continued his story. He discovered early on that this world was considerably underdeveloped compared to my old world. But soon he understood the reason for the lack of technological progress. He found the book, Beginner's Guide to Privileged Magic, and it dawned on him that it was all because of magic. He opened the book and started reading from where he left off last time. In his reasoning, he realized that in his old world they had a life force called Kai used by practitioners to strengthen their bodies and weapons through careful preparation. But this world had a similar power. It is called mana. He thought, scratching his ass. The ability to control mana is largely genetic. Approximately 1 in 100 children own it. Again scratching his ass because of the rash on it, he reasoned. Either way, mana can be used in a variety of ways. The 2 most common methods are boosters and spells. Amplifiers empower their body with magical mana, allowing them to wield incredible strength, defense, and agility. However, their weakness lies in their limited range. Sorcerers radiate mana into the outside world, allowing them to bend their surroundings to their will. However, they must supplement their own mana core with mana from the outside world to form the spell. My mother was what they called a deviant, more specifically an emitter. He knew it from the way she treated his knee. They are a rare mage type that is able to use unique mana regeneration. According to this book, the first awakening of magic occurs between early adolescence and late adolescence, when their mana core appears. The mana core sounds unusual, similar to the Kai Center in my previous life. In order to form a Kai Center, children were taught to meditate and feel the fragments of Kai scatter inside their bodies and collect them in one place. He looked at his hands and thought, "I wonder what will happen if I try." He concentrated, and suddenly a white core appeared near his hands. "It works. It's work." But his mother interrupted him by grabbing him under the armpits and saying, "Here you are, Art, to bother me is." She sniffed the air and rolled her eyes, asking, "Oh honey, are you having trouble with that?" And he was already indignant in his head. "Mom, I'm about to start my journey to become the greatest dignity in this world. Don't make me be a constipated baby." Although I don't think I had any problems. But Mom did not let up and said, "Let's take off the diaper." Sniffing and sighing, he realizes that in the midst of his careful concentration, he really contaminated his diaper. Like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.